things have, especially over this last week, been coming out. Obviously, with regards to the Jimmy Savile scandal, we had Bill Maloney from Pie and Mash Films came down to the column on. He came Wednesday, and he came live with us on air on Thursday with Brian Garish, and he was, he's been talking about Jimmy Savile for a long time, Bill Maloney. And more and more things over this last week are coming out with regards to Jimmy Savile. What are your thoughts on it?
Well, I've just been writing an article about it for the last 2 days, going out over the weekend, and I've headed it Jimmy Savile, Doorman to the Cesspit. You could say doorway to the cesspit as well, for reasons I'll explain. I was first told that Jimmy Savile was a paedophile in about 1997-98 by a number of people, but including the people who had serious connections into the royal family. Not that they were members of the royal family, but they were very close to people that were on the inside. And they told me about the Satanism that went on in the royal family, the paedophilia, and all that stuff. And then out of nowhere, they brought up Jimmy Savile. And of course, I'm into a conversation about, royal family, how they treated Diana, paedophilia and all this stuff. And suddenly Jimmy Savile comes out of nowhere, this aging disc jockey. And I obviously asked the question, where does he fit in? And they told me about it. Not just his paedophilia, but his necrophilia. He has a thing about having sex with dead people. And it was pointed out quite rightly to me, why do you think he volunteered to be a porter and a volunteer in hospitals, particularly the one in Leeds? Because it gave him access to mortuaries and dead people, basically. And if you look at some of the real most extreme, I mean, in and of itself it's extreme, but most extreme of paedophilia, one of the things that they desire that gives them the biggest high is sex with disabled people, either physically disabled or mentally disabled. And again, because of his charity work, he was able to have access to people like that, to children like that. Also, what is happening, Lou, in the media at the moment is that and I can understand it in the initial stages, as long as it doesn't stay there. It's focusing on him as a paedophile and his own paedophile activities and one or two other, showbiz people around him. But the biggest story, the biggest picture story is that he was a procurer of children, and he procured them for the royal family. He procured them for people like Ted Heath, who is exposed as a Satanist, paedophile, and mass child killer, serial child killer, in a book called The Biggest Secret. It came out in 1998. He was alive then for years afterwards. And he was therefore untouchable. If you look at some of the quotes that he gave at various times, he said he was untouchable. And he gave an interview for Esquire magazine in which he said, the thing about me is I get things done and I work deep cover. I've known the royal family for a million years. He was talking about his connections to the royal family and how he was a regular visitor to Buckingham Palace, Kensington Palace, where Diana lived after the marriage to Charles broke up, Highgrove, the country estate of Prince Charles. And he also said, significantly, that the man who introduced him to the royal family initially in the 1960s was Lord Mountbatten. And anyone who's done research into high-level paedophilia, Lord Mountbatten's name will come up. Of course, he was the mentor and Mr. Uncle, big uncle to Prince Charles. And these names are not a surprise to me, because these names came up in the conversations I had with these insiders quite a long time ago now. And because he was procuring for children, this is why he was untouchable. People say, well, why didn't people know about this? Why didn't the BBC uncover it? Why did all these, inquiries, police inquiries just stop and go nowhere? Because the way these rings work is that they put their people in all the key areas of society, the institutions of law enforcement, of judiciary, of media, of politics. Of course, royalties are much based on it. And therefore, they watch each other's backs. And when you're procuring children for the rich and famous and the powerful and all the rest of it, then your back is their back. Because if you go under and it comes out, they go under and it comes out. And one of two things happens to these procurers of children. Either they keep quiet and are safe, like Savile, hence he got to the age of 84, or you're considered dangerous and not safe, in which case you're no longer with us. And Savile understood the game, and he played the game to his own benefit. And another question, maybe someone can answer it. Maybe there's a plausible answer. But I look at his Rolls Royce that went for about 160 grand. I look at his other cars, Bentleys and stuff. I look at, apparently, according to the media anyway, he has at least 8 homes. I look at the millions of pounds in cash on top of all that, in bank accounts that was in his will. And I look at a guy who, yes, would have earned quite well in the 60s and 70s as the disc jockey and Jim will fix it and personal appearances and advertising. But then I look at a guy of 84 who's done none of that for decades and has no real obvious means of living that lifestyle, but still does. And, all I can say is procuring children for rich and famous paedophiles is a very lucrative business because you obviously get well paid for it if you do it well, and he appears to have done from their point of view. And they also watch your back because your back is their back. And I found it interesting. There was an interview with a guy in, I think it was the Daily Mail this week, a guy called Guy Marsden, who was a nephew of Jimmy Savile. And he said that at the age of 13, he lived up in Leeds. He ran away from home with a few friends to London. And he ended up, as they do, at Euston Station, and was picked up by some sleazy guy, as they normally are, and taken to some what was described as a grubby flat. And he said around 4 days later, Uncle Jimmy Savile turns up, not because he knows his nephew's there, but he's come to see the sleazy guy. And he said he's 59 now, this guy, and married with children and all the rest of it. But he said that when Jimmy Savile turned up, he thought, oh, no, I'm in for it now, because he'd run away from home and didn't tell his parents where he was. But no, he said, Jimmy just took us to a better place. And he told the story of how he and his friends were taken to the very palatial apartment of or a house of a so-called famous pop impresario, and that he witnessed paedophile parties at which Savile would bring children. Sometimes he would bring along, he said, someone who was dressed like a priest, which gave the feeling that these kids were coming from children's homes, exactly where they were coming from. And so back in the 60s it was going on, and he's done it ever since.
It's sort of been a bit of an open secret. A lot of people have seemed to know that Jimmy was in, he liked the young ones. I mean, even in his autobiography, Love is an Uphill Thing, there's quite a few telling tales that he describes, getting young, wayward, young teenage girls and all that. And yet, nothing was ever done about it. Now that he's dead, of course, yeah, he can't tell any tales himself, but you would still think that they would be trying to repress anything getting out, because once the eyes are on Jimmy, then they may be on to his clients. Do you think this was just like a natural thing where there was just too much evidence coming out and the story broke naturally, or do you think they're trying to, like, it's just surprising me that it's all coming out now, when so clearly there's been a cover up. You would have thought, if they really wanted to keep that information stum, they'd be able to.
Well, it's a good question, and we won't really know for a while, I don't think, and don't think we ever do unless we've got insider knowledge on these things. But, it is true that while every day this network of families, this cabal gets more and more power, on the surface anyway of the system, it's still not, got control of everything.
I mean, it says a lot for Esther Ranson, saying that she had her thoughts that it was going on. She's the head of Childline. I mean, alarm bells surely should be raised here, because also apparently Childline was set up sort of in Aberdeen, and we know there's been, other cases up in Aberdeen. And it's just the fact that Esther Ranson, being the head of Childline, obviously access to kids' calls. What do you think on that?
Well, I think it's something that should be legitimately investigated. I think anything to do with children should be legitimately investigated to make sure that it stands up. I mean, I'm not going to, say anything about it this time because I've not researched that particular organization. But, it's possible. I'm not saying it happened, but it's possible that this was one that got through the net because it was basically all this has come out as a result of one television program. And then that gave confidence for other people to come forward. However, it's going to be significant for me where it goes from here, because at the moment, I talk about defending the first domino. And defending the first domino in this case is for none of it to come out. Once it has come out, you defend the second domino. You accept that, he was a paedophile and he was a mass paedophile all over the country, and there was a cover-up of it. The second domino you don't want to fall, so that's the next form of defense, is that he was a procurer for the rich and famous. Now, we'll see where that goes. I was talking to a journalist today and pointing the same thing out, that, if it stops where it is now, we learn more about the cesspit behind the smiley faces and the morality of the system. But we need to go the next step forward, because once we can connect Savile's procurement to not just soap stars that people are talking about and other people in showbiz, that needs to happen. Yes, if it's true, I'm sure in many cases it is. But what we need to do is to connect this through to the real people that are orchestrating it, to the royal family, to the top politicians. I was told by many people, which is why I was confident to go and name him when he was alive for years afterwards, that Ted Heath was a Satanist, was a torturer of children and a mass killer of children. He loved to kill them. I was told this by enough people in the 1990s, the late 1990s, mid 1990s, to go with it. And in this book, The Biggest Secret, and nothing since has given me anything but confirmation of this. And to see him connected into the Jersey Children's Home, he was also connected by some researchers into Kincora, the boys' home in Belfast. That scandal broke in the 1980s time, and Mountbatten's also been connected to that by some researchers, which connects us into Savile again, who said that Mountbatten was the guy that introduced him to the royal family, and which led him to have a close relationship with Prince Philip till they had a big row and they fell out apparently, and also with Prince Charles, which has been even come out in the mainstream media, the Christmas cards and all that stuff. Also, don't forget, I mean, he may have been exaggerating, but certainly it happened on some occasions that Savile spent Christmas with Margaret Thatcher. And I'm not saying Margaret Thatcher knew the background, but Margaret Thatcher's cabinet, like the Blair cabinet, was awash with paedophiles. You see, in so many ways, when you're creating there's another reason that I can explain in a second, if you like, of why this obsession with paedophilia is as it is. But when you're bringing together different groups, like different political parties, to push in the same direction, you need cement. You need cement to connect people in these different elements of the system to push in the same direction. And thus you will have secret societies doing that. So people in the Labour Party, Conservative Party, Liberal Democrats, some will be members of the same secret society. You have things like the Friends of Israel groups in each party, which is another cement. But two major cements on top of that are paedophilia and Satanism. And if you can get somebody into the ring, into the system, either as a procurer or as a partaker of this nightmare, then those people are going to do what you say from then on. You get a prime minister who's been compromised in this way, and he will pass and press for whatever legislation you want, whether he's conservative or Labour or anything. And there's an enormous amount of blackmail going on, which is leading to politicians pressing for things that they wouldn't otherwise press for and pass and bring into law. This side of it is often connected to paedophilia. I mean, it's a well-known technique in the United States and Britain with MI5, MI6, etc., that they will provide people like foreign diplomats and what have you with children, if that's their desire, and then they will film it. And once they've filmed it, they are no longer representing their country or whatever they're supposed to be representing. They are representing whatever British intelligence says they're representing, because they can destroy them overnight. And it's interesting when you watch people who in politics who have said they stand for this and stand for that, and at one point possibly genuinely did, but then suddenly they go in the opposite way. Well, maybe they've changed their mind, or maybe their mind's been changed for them. Yeah, I mean, that's plain to see. A lot of the time, these politicians will come out with policies that it's absolute suicide, and there's no rhyme or reason for it. And obviously, the only thing that is going to push them to that, to lose their careers, basically, is they've got dirt on them. And it's the same thing with like Bohemian Grove and all these sorts of I mean, Stanley Kubrick, Eyes Wide Shut. It's that sort of thing. There's dirt on absolutely everyone, and there's that sort of there's that you don't even need to have blackmail. No, everybody just knows that. Bill came out with this is society. This is the situation. This is why they're looking to bring people into politics. It's one reason why there's so many who have these desires, because they know that they're straight in the back pocket because of this. And this is one reason, but there's another, I should suggest, bigger reason why this is all pervading. And that takes us out of the world of the conscious mind into other dimensions of reality and entities that feed off human energy. I've been writing and talking about this for a very long time, and it absolutely connects into paedophilia for this reason. I learned through intense research in the 1990s and just after in America and Britain, but particularly America, that these entities, they feed off human energy, yes, but there's a particular human energy that they want more than anything else. And that is the energy of children before puberty. Now, we see puberty as a hormonal change in this reality that we experience, what I call the hologram. But if you go back to the base construct of this reality, it's not, what we see. It's actually a vibrational information field, a waveform information field. And so what we see as a hormonal change in our conscious mind reality is actually an expression of a vibrational information a waveform change at the foundation information construct of this reality, and they want that energy before that change takes place. This is the obsession with children. So what they do, because these pedophiles, especially the upper echelon pedophiles in the bloodline, this hybrid bloodline, which is because of the greater genetic compatibility, it means yet again on the base construct, it's a much closer vibrational compatibility. It means that these bloodline people or families, whatever, are much more easily and more powerfully possessed by these entities beyond human sight than the general run of the population, where the genetic and therefore the energetic compatibility is not as close. And so what they do is these possessing entities, which take control of their mental and emotional processes, they are stimulating this desire for sex with children. And when the sex is happening, the possessing entity is using the pedophile as a conduit to draw off the child's life force. There are some shaman around the world in native cultures that also talk about this. And I found this in research in the Western world and insiders in politics and many other things. But that's what's happening. And because there is this insatiable demand for this energy, there is this insatiable desire of pedophiles, because the two are connected. And because there's these two expressions of insatiable desire for sex with children and the energy drawn off it, there is an insatiable need for a constant throughput of children all over the world. And this is where the Saviles come in. This is where on another level, the Hamiltons come in. In the Dunblane killer, Thomas Hamilton, he was a procurer of children for the elite as well. And these people are covered up as he was until Dunblane happened.
And of course, you were talking to Arizona Wilder, coming out with similar stories. There was Kathy O'Brien as well, talking about what went on. I mean, firstly, how is Arizona? Do you stay in touch with her? How is she?
Sat with us some years ago. Stay in touch with Kathy O'Brien. We had an email exchange only the other day, but Arizona just sort of disappeared. I said in my last book, if you're out there, contact me. Let's make sure you're okay.
Yeah.
But yes, I picked up this theme from people all over the world, Australia, Africa, wherever you go, because, as I've said before, the world is controlled by the secret society equivalent of a transnational corporation. There is a headquarters of the secret society corporation. It's in Europe. There are major subsidiaries in places like the United States, but the headquarters is in Europe. And in each country, there is a network of secret societies and bloodline families and their agents and offshoots whose job it is to impose the centrally dictated global agenda upon their sphere of influence, their country. And at all levels, the global level, through the European Union levels, through national levels, into local community levels, because it is a holographic structure. Every part of the whole, no matter how small, is a smaller version of the greater whole. At every level, therefore, you find the same blueprint operating, and crucial to that blueprint is Satanism and pedophilia. Everywhere you go, everywhere.
Mm-hmm. And it goes back, thousands of years, the whole thing of taking people's children, all these decadent evil societies, the Aztecs, the Egyptians, they all have these cases where they would have to take the masses' children and sacrifice them to their gods and all this sort of thing. And even now, today, with the modern eugenics movement, coming out of Galton and Darwin, you've got this obsession with killing children. We don't need to, the amount of papers that they come out with trying to promote infanticide, you're able to abort up to 2 or 3 years, because they're not real people there. It takes someone, extremely sick to even think that's acceptable, and it makes you wonder how these people can get away with it, because I'm pretty sure if a person off the street went and killed a 1-year-old baby, you wouldn't have a load of trendies coming up to you and saying that it was acceptable.
No.
It's a sickness. It's very frustrating to even talk to other people about this sort of thing.
Yeah.
Because they think you're mad to even be talking about it. The one thing, sorry to rant on, but there was that book that the German government, it's sanctioned by the EU, about, how to sexualize your daughter, how fathers should masturbate their daughters because women are growing up ashamed of their bodies because there's not a natural from the parents.
But then we've got
molesting them, and it's EU sanctioned.
And then you've got the Vatican City with the legal age of consent is, I think they've moved it up now. It was 12, wasn't it? I think they've moved it up to 14 now as well.
Yeah, it's just, but the thing is, it's all documented. It's black and white. There are these books out there. They're handing them to schools, and you talk about it, and people look at you like you're the nut job. And I know it's very frustrating,
Yeah, a few things there. First of all, sacrificing young virgins to the gods, as they used to say, that's just code for children. That's all, prepubescent children, because they want this energy before puberty. I was reading the other day that Harriet Harman, the deputy leader of the Labour Party, she represented an organization at one point as a lawyer who wanted to bring down the age of consent for children. And you know, it's this obsession with children and sex with children, all that stuff. It just comes up all over the world, and there is a reason for it. And the reason is what I've been talking about. And this is something that people need to start to get their heads around. The fact that the world is not, and what is happening in this world is not confined to what you can see in the tiny frequency band that your eyes can bring into some kind of a physical world. It's much bigger than that. And to understand what goes on outside human sight is to have a much greater understanding of what goes on within human sight.
Yeah. I think moving on to maybe different topic,